Welcome back. This is the Unit 1 note video number 5, and this is the final note video on part 1 of the notes. So that means we're halfway through Unit 1, and after this note video, you need to start thinking about getting ready for a quiz. So this section of the notes is about technology. Technology is how people change the world around them to better fit their needs. So if that need is survival, you need fresh water, something along those lines, or if the need is just entertainment, you need something to pass the time, then whatever it is that you've changed about the world around you to make that happen, that is technology. So technology can be broken down into 4 different levels. So we can call it the bottom level, or the first level is called obsolete technology. Now, this is technology that's not used anymore. In fact, if you even wanted to try to use it, it would be hard because most of the time technology needs something else to run, some other kind of paired technology to work, and that doesn't exist either. So this is outdated. It would be very difficult to actually use this even if we wanted to. We are going to go through, as an example, sort of the path of music. So a good example of outdated music technology would be 8-track tapes. That was this thing right here. If you've never heard of an 8-track tape, 8-track tapes were awesome. They were awesome because what came before 8-track tapes? Records. People had to listen to music on records. So it was very hard, I'm going to say impossible, to install a record player in your car. So until the invention of the 8-track tape, you could not listen to music in your car unless you wanted to listen to the radio. But if you wanted to pick the songs that you wanted to listen to while you were in the car, that was impossible. The technology did not exist until the creation of the 8-track tape. The 8-track tape worked with this magnetic strip in here, and you could record music on it. How many songs could you fit on one of these puppies? That's right, 8. That's why it's called an 8-track. And what else was awesome? If you got tired of listening to one song, you could press a button and it would immediately skip to the next song. It was phenomenal technology. But it was a little bit big. 8-track tapes, I wish I had something on here. Here's a nice size reference. They were pretty large, definitely. So they were kind of bulky. And other technology started to come out that was similar. It was this. It still ran on this magnetic tape. But the cool thing about this was you could get blank ones. And you could make your own music. You could not do that with an 8-track tape. So more people started using these, and 8-tracks stopped being used. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a cassette tape. This revolutionized teenage dating. Before the cassette tape, you had to actually go up and talk to a person. Girls, you had to go up and talk to a boy. Boys, you had to go up and talk to a girl and tell them how you felt. But when the cassette tape was invented, now you could listen to the radio until a song came on that reminded you of that person, and you could hit record and put it on the tape. And then when the tape was full, you could give it to the person, and it was called a mixed tape. You could say, these songs on this explain how I feel, and then run away. Ask your parents if anybody ever made them a mixtape, or if they made a mixtape for anybody else. It was a very common thing to do back then. So, cassette tapes, though, are also outdated technology. They're obsolete. Nobody plays cassette tapes pretty much anymore. So what's the next level of technology? It's what we call current technology. And current technology is what people on Earth are using now. Now, you probably will disagree with me on this, and that's okay because we're in a moment of flux, which is what makes the music example so great for this. I'm going to claim that the current form of technology for music is the CD. You will probably disagree with me. But if I go buy music, I'm going to buy a CD. I've actually never bought what I'm going to claim is the next kind of technology. Even though most of you use it, I still use this. So in general, if there's still people that use it, you can call it current until the new thing is itself being taken over. So the next level of technology is called emerging. And emerging technology is essentially what is going to make current technology obsolete. So I'm going to say that emerging technology is the MP3 technology, or the technology that you find in like the iTunes store, the way that they can save music in that format. That all started with MP3 technology. So I'm going to say that digital music is emerging technology. Even though you probably have maybe even never bought a CD. You probably have only ever bought digital music. So this is what is going to become current technology pretty much as soon as something new comes out. Maybe they will start to be able to beam music right into your brain or something crazy like that will become emerging technology and start to even take over digital. So we want to talk about emerging technology. That would be stuff in music that is just new and coming out. Things like wearable MP3 players, like an iBangle, or here's a set of sunglasses that actually has like drop-down little earbuds that come out of the stems, and then it would all, you could save music on it or stream it right from the web or whatever. So the final level of technology is called coexisting technology. And I referenced records earlier, and notice I did not claim that they were obsolete. And they're not obsolete because people still use records. There is an entire branch of the music industry that is all about using records as a musical instrument. So coexisting technology is technology that has been around for a really long time, and maybe it was replaced for its original purpose, maybe not, but it is still being used frequently. It could be used for something new, or in the event we'll say like a pencil. A pencil has been around for a really long time. We have ballpoint pens. We have things that are better than pencils, but people still use pencils. They still have a role. So DJs will make music from these records. And let's take a look at some other progressions of technology while we listen to some music made from records. This is a guy, he's the most famous musician on the planet. He's the most famous DJ on the planet, although you've probably never heard of him. He actually sells out soccer stadiums whenever he tours. He just doesn't really come to America, so if you talk about all the people on the planet, he's probably the most famous musical artist that's out there. He actually, a few years ago at the Olympics, was spinning records for the entire parade of athletes, and you can actually get the CD. So I'm curious if anybody knows who this guy is. So we have the wheel. We replaced the wheel, we put two of them together and started riding on it, and made a chariot. If two wheels are good, four wheels are even better. We got the wagon. Oh, we got a covered wagon in case it rains. And then we added motors. So instead of these carriages needing to be pulled by a horse, they were called horseless carriages, which then turned into some pretty cool vehicles. And we got things like the El Camino. We have our current technology, the current cars that are out there, and future or emerging technology, things that aren't yet out there and available, but are in the works. Curious if anybody knows what this is. Take a close look. This is an abacus. It's how people used to do math. I've seen people do multiplication problems on an abacus, and it's crazy. These things fly all around. They're so good at it. I don't even make sense of what they're doing. This was a really, really powerful tool. My chemistry teacher in high school actually used to use one of these in class. We use calculators. He used this, and sometimes he would race us, and he would get the answer before we would. I have no idea how this thing works. You grab this little thing in the middle, and it slides back and forth, and somehow you slide it back and forth in the right way, and wherever you stop is the answer to the math problem. This is called a slide rule. No idea how it works, but it was pretty awesome to see my old high school chemistry teacher, Mr. Gregory, use one. Here's an early calculator. This did not run on electricity. You could only add or subtract. You would punch in the numbers like 123. If this switch was up, you would crank on the lever, and it would add that value to whatever the last value was. You'd punch in another one, pull the crank, and it would add the number again. If you flip this little switch down, you'd punch a number in, pull the crank, and it would subtract the number. So, if you needed to add or subtract, this was your tool. My parents actually had this calculator. You can see the wire in the back, it plugged in the wall. This thing was more than a foot deep and about 1.5 feet wide. This thing was humongous, and it weighed like 30 pounds. But you could multiply, you could do square roots. Holy smokes, you could do some serious math on this puppy. Then we have our current technology, and we have graphing calculators. Hey, what's this all about? Rowboats got bigger. We added sails. Now we could actually get a little bit further away from land and explore the world a little bit more. We got even bigger sails, and we could sail out to where you couldn't see land. We got really big ships like frigates and galleons, and I started sailing to other continents. Then we added steam power. And for really the first time, you could actually sail your boat against the current. It was really challenging for boats to go up the Mississippi River before steam power. Steam power made it possible to actually go up the river, and it made commerce in the United States like something wholly different than it never was before. For a long time, if boats wanted to go up the river, you would actually have had to have hitched the boat to some mules that were on the shore, and the mules would walk and drag you up the river. It took forever. So steamships started to replace wind ships. Then we have giant ships. These things are like floating cities. I've never actually been on a cruise ship, but I've heard amazing things. Both of these ships have exactly the same name. I'm curious if anybody knows. I sometimes ask this in class, and people start using context clues, and they look around, and they see this thing right back here. This ship is the USS Pittsburgh. This was a battleship in World War II. I believe it was World War II. And in battle, it actually had its nose blown off. So its nose got taken off in battle. It was made all from steel from Pittsburgh, and they decommissioned the ship after it got hurt like this. And they now, the current USS Pittsburgh in the United States Navy is a nuclear attack class submarine. And this is it right here. They actually took the steel from this ship, melted it down, and made this ship out of it. So the USS Pittsburgh is a nuclear attack class submarine. This is a telephone. You would talk up here, you would put this up to your ear and try to listen, and it was only marginally better than a tin can on a string. And what was really interesting, maybe you didn't notice about that last picture, is it didn't have one of these. You couldn't actually call someone that you wanted. You would pick it up, and a woman would, and it was always a woman, she was the switchboard operator, would be like, who are you trying to call? And then she would literally have to plug a wire into a hole on the wall that connected it to a wire that ran to the other person's house. It was actually like very, very much like a tin can on a string. You had a tin can in your house that looked like one of these, they had a tin can in their house that looked like one of these, and there was a wire that literally connected the two houses, and you could talk back and forth. Well, with the invention of this kind of phone, you could actually dial, you could move this thing around. It went shh, tick, 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 shh, tick, 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 tick. It took a little while to call someone. Yes, on a rotary phone, it took a while to actually place the phone call, but you could dial directly to someone's house. Maybe you didn't notice on the last one. This one actually has bells on it. That last one, you didn't really know when someone was calling you. You had to be like, do you hear someone talking? I think I hear someone talking. I think it's coming from that device over there. Is someone trying to call me? Here, you would even have a ringer, so now you know if you're being called. Cradle phones. I was in Italy a few years ago, and this exact phone in really obnoxious lime green was in my hotel room. My parents had this phone. Thing weighed like 15 pounds. And then push-button phones were all the rage in the 90s. It became tone phones. Instead of having to dial that little thing and listen to the clicks around for the number, you could push a button, doot, 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 make your phone call. But you were still connected by a wire. So when you were having a phone call, you were tethered to the wall. Oftentimes, you would see teenagers that had spun around in circles and completely mummified by the phone cord. These meant you had made success in life. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the first portable phone. They called these bag phones. This was the battery. That's the phone. There's your battery. You're not putting this one in your pocket. But this one, I clearly remember, when the first person that I knew had a phone in their car. His name was Sig. He was one of my dad's best friends, and he drove this big Cadillac. And I went out, and he's like, check this out. And I sat in the passenger seat, and he handed me a phone. Crazy talk. He had a phone in his car. Remember, they were attached to walls. Cars weren't attached to walls. How do you have a phone in your car? I called my friend Dave, and I was like, Dave, you'll never believe where I'm calling you from. I'm calling you from a car. And of course, he said all he heard was... So, phones and cars, pretty awesome. Here's the first cell phone. They're getting a little bit smaller. And then flip phones. And then more modern phones. They're working on phones. We have phones out that are watches now. Phones with flexible screens. You can bend them around. Wearable devices. All right, so technology and science goes hand in hand. As we get better science, as we understand science better, it allows us to make better technology. And then when we get better technology, it allows us to make better observations, and now we can do science better and make new discoveries, which turns into better technology, which turns into better science, which turns into better technology. And I'll stop now because you've already been listening to this for 18 minutes. So, technology exists as a system, and I'm going to talk about systems a lot. Systems have different levels. Systems have a goal, and the goal is what the system is trying to accomplish. The input is what you start with. The process is what happens in the system. It's what happens to the inputs in order to turn the inputs into whatever the goal is. And the outputs are what come out. Feedback monitors what's going on and kind of updates the different parts to make sure that the system is actually meeting the goal. I realized that I referenced this in the last note video. I didn't realize that we hadn't talked about it yet. So in general, you can think of a system working like this. It might make more sense if we draw it out. Let's use a green chalkboard here and maybe some yellow. So we have the input. That goes in. It goes in and something magical happens in the process. Magic, whatever that is. Which becomes the output. So in a system, we have the input, something happens to it. We have the input, something happens to it. It turns into the output. Now, if the output ends up working along with our goal, sweet. Our system is working properly. If the output doesn't match our goal, then we have a feedback loop which can go back and figure out why and kind of start over again and tinker with things until the output does match the goal. So these things, these lines here, would be your feedback. So, quick checks we'll talk about in class. Think of the school, think of learning as a system. What would the goal be of this process? Or what would the goal be of this system? What would the inputs be to this system? What would the feedbacks be to this system? See if you can figure out what the different parts would be. Last year you learned about photosynthesis. Chemical equations work just like systems. I'm actually going to reference that a lot when we start doing chemistry. So there's inputs. Those are the things that come before the process. The process on a chemical reaction is actually represented by the arrow, and then the outputs are on the other side. So think to what you learned about photosynthesis and what are the outputs of the system of photosynthesis. All right. Booby trap number 5, 12 questions. This is the last booby trap before your first content quiz. Good luck.